Okay, we'll be moving on to the third lecture of today, which will be given by Dr. Ademola Fayemi. Dr. Ademola Fayemi is a senior faculty member at the University of Lagos, Nigeria, where he teaches philosophy. He is also a principal investigator at the African Cluster Center of the Africa Multiple Cluster of Excellence, University of Lagos. He writes and lectures widely in African philosophy, African bioethics, research ethics, and African environmental ethics. He is currently researching the question of epistemic injustice in the Research for Health Justice framework. The title of his talk is Can Morally Enhanced Individuals Attain Personhood Within the African Philosophical Context? Dr. Fayemi, please speak to us. Thank you.
Yeah, I greet everyone, wherever we are in the world. First, I would like to thank Dr. Amara Esther Chimakonam for putting together this timely colloquium. In the spirit of conversational thinking, my talk is framed in the context of a critical conversation with Amara's 2021 article on transhumanism in Africa. I would like to first thank the earlier speakers, Professor Stephen and Rihanna, because some of the points they have made are in line with my thinking, which I hope to advance in this talk. The question of whether personhood is compatible with transhumanism in African culture is gaining traction in African bioethics. In this talk, I aim to further contribute to the debate by focusing on moral enhancement and personhood in African philosophical literature. I would like to draw some insights from Amara Chimakonam's work, where she defended that transhumanism is incompatible with Fayemi entity's account of personhood. However, in this talk, my claim is simple. It is that moral enhancement is compatible with an African conception of personhood. And that the fact that Amara said it is incompatible does not really translate to its moral permissibility. While we do know that the debate on moral enhancement technologies as a scientific fiction or fact is unsettled and still ongoing, I aim to use oxytocin as an example of pharmacological moral enhancement to establish my claim that one, moral enhanced individuals who exhibit ethical virtues that contribute positively to the community have some potentials of attaining marginal, if not radically full personhood within McKittey's conception of personhood. I would like to start by bringing to forth the core arguments of Amara Chimakonam in an article entitled Transhumanism in Africa. In that article, she maintained that transhumanism, first, she tried to answer the question whether transhumanism in Africa is consistent with the conception of personhood or a dominant conception of personhood in African culture, and what justification do we have to allow its moral acceptance. So Our argument goes this thus. Transhumanism is incompatible, where incompatible means possible but incoherent with an African communitarian conception of personhood. And in this regard, she focused on Fayemi Kitty's account of personhood. Accepting transhumanism has consequential implications for sustaining the influential and dominant understanding of personhood in many African cultures, which is the Kitty's account. So she says that if transhumanism is allowed, it would eliminate the moral weight placed on attaining personhood and render the idea of personhood absurd, because its representation of moral perfection and compulsion to do good negates the strive towards achieving or failing at personhood, which is at the core of McKitty's account of personhood. The argument can also be framed thus that if moral enhancement is an instance of transhumanism that involves a necessary choice of right over wrong, then it is incompatible with an African communitarian account of personhood that values alternative actions of either right or wrong. To conclude, our claim is that if morally enhanced individuals cannot attain personhood within McKitty's account, then the moral permissibility of transhumanism is not supported from an Afro-communitarian standpoint. In this talk, I aim to provide counter-arguments to Chimakonam's argument. And I will be justifying that morally enhanced individuals can attain personhood in McKitty's account. A good starting point to lay the foundation of my argument is perhaps to provide a conspectus of McKitty's understanding of personhood. According to McKitty, a person is defined by a process of belonging and being incorporated into a community, which requires some ritual process of transformation. Although McKitty did not consider the emerging topic of transhumans or transhumanism, it is reasonable to argue that morally enhanced individuals with the capacity and actual of virtues that contribute positively to the community do have some potential of attaining marginal and not radically full personhood within McKitty's understanding. Personhood in McKitty's analysis admits varying degrees. His pendulum swings over time, either progressively or retrogressively, depending on how an individual is embedded in the community's moral excellence. Although morally enhanced individuals may possess some of those communities' moral ideals, including kindness, humility, and care as examples, there are other performative requirements of attributing personhood, including ancestral, ritual participation, and social roles fulfillment that are not necessarily byproduct of personal virtues attributable to a morally enhanced agent. The heart of belonging to a community and being embedded as a member of that community is what makes an individual a person within McKitty's significant conception of it. Contrary to Chimakonam, that the attainment of personhood is not merely a matter of having moral alternatives, nor is moral enhancement necessarily a claim to moral perfection, as she inferred. Enhancement of genes responsible for some character dispositions in humans is not to be construed for genetic determinism, as the community, culture, and environment do have considerable influence on the universal behavior disposition of an individual that is enhanced. So in McKitty, how do you attain personhood? It will tell you that personhood can either be attained or achieved partially or in full. And for you to achieve it partially, one is required to cultivate virtues and moral character determined by the community. And by being actively involved in community life, in the life of the community, one can also work towards personhood, as well as engaging in some rituals and rites. These are some of the hallmarks of attaining full personhood. Now, my question is, in the context of McKittey's conception of personhood, can someone who is morally enhanced attain personhood? And to take home that point, we shall use the example of oxytocin as a case study. Now, in a fundamental sense, transhumanism, I think, is compatible with infocommunitarian conception of personhood. McKittey personally affirms that as far as Africans are concerned, the reality of the communal world takes precedence over the reality of individual life histories, whatever that may be. Now, if the reality of the community, for instance, is seeking harmony, which is a force in many customary and contemporary African societies, and if moral enhancement of an individual can facilitate consciousness and moral dispositions towards pro-socially harmonious values, then there is a sense of compatibility between McKittey's Afro-communitarian view of personhood and moral enhancement. Enhancing an individual's capacity in attaining self-moral good is important in the maintenance and attainment of moral goods and norms. Let us consider the example of oxytocin, which is a form of pharmacological intervention in moral enhancement. And I would like to quote Francisco Lara in this regard. According to her, oxytocin appears to be crucial for peer bonding as well as for people attitudes and conduct. In particular, it is believed that this hormone may be largely responsible for empathy among human beings. In fact, the possibility of synthesizing the hormone artificially, together with recent experiments of nasal and blood administration, have raised expectations of curing certain psychological disorders characterized by an acute lack of empathy, as for example, in the case of autism. End of quote. Now, when we talk of oxytocin, I think it has some moral significance in the context of trust and empathy. These are morally relevant behaviors of individuals that can be improved on through such intervention like oxytocin. While the use of oxytocin may lead to the attainment of partial personhood in contemporary African societies, such may not necessarily result in morally justified behaviors. An apt example in this regard is a psychopath who is known for creating constant nuisance in society due to his inability to make good moral choices. Psychopaths have been known to be unable to recognize the emotions of others, and this prevents them from attaining personhood as they cannot positively relate with others in society through the making of good moral choices. Can we then say that adopting and applying moral enhancement interventions on such individuals to enable them to act appropriately in the society makes them less of a person? Given that oxytocin has a key role in social functions such as emotional recognition, which helps those incapable of this kind of recognition to be able to exercise such moral choices. The effect of such option of moral enhancement on the relational progression towards personhood can be better imagined. McKittey's conception of personhood is essentially relational. Thus, a moral enhancement intervention that can promote such relational good is at best consistent with McKittey's understanding of personhood. One important essence of morality is to act in ways that promote and balance the interests of others. Being sympathetic is a factor that allows an individual to place himself or herself in the shoes of another, and this regulates the behavior such an individual dispenses towards other members of the community. Oxytocin are been demonstrated to have the capacity to increase trust in humans and moderate positive emotions. Apart from that, to the extent that moral enhancement coheres with the notion of personhood in McKittey's analysis, I think there are some moral tensions that may arise from such compatibility, which can perpetuate harm if unresolved. Some of these moral tensions stem from the fact that moral enhancement takes away the moral alternatives of a moral agent. Amara made this point. The concept of right and freedom is characterized majorly by the individual to choose, even in the way he or she acts morally. One of the major arguments against moral enhancement always stems from the place of personal identity. Those against transhumanism may perhaps argue that morally enhanced individuals act not of their own will, but on external pressures that regulate their moral behavior. Amara Chimakonam calls this compulsive moral action. Morally enhanced individuals are not autonomous beings, as they lack personal will, which will eventually lead to a loss of identity. And I think Chimakonam's critique of compatibility of moral enhancement and McKinsey's analysis of personhood resonates with this type of argument on lack of moral alternatives. However, there are fundamental ways by which one may want to object to such position. Suppose Amara's objection to moral enhancement interventions such as oxytocin are capable of undermining the cherished value of moral alternatives is hypothetically granted. Yet, such does not vitiate the compatibility thesis of moral enhancement and personhood in a case context. When an individual is morally enhanced to offer more good to the society, then such an individual stands a great chance of being more of a person within his community. Chimakonam's argument fails to recognize that the individual and society are better off when individual has a considerable moral enhancement technologies available for opt-in than being given the liberty to make non-enhanced interventionist moral decisions, likely more detrimental to self and society. Indeed, moral enhancement goes beyond when an individual is induced with biological or pharmacological interventions. The main act of shaping an individual's attitude through the various means of socialization subjects such an individual to the inability to act the way they would have otherwise acted. And the core of this point I'm trying to make is that individuals losing their freedom of choice is also subtly found in the very foundation of socialization, which is an indispensable aspect of African culture. Essentially, the use of biomedical or pharmacological interventions in morally enhancing individuals is not so fundamentally different from other agents of socialization that are bound in African cultures. Such modes of socialization, like moral enhancement elements, limit the moral freedom of the moral agents for the good of the individual and the society at large. How can we reconcile moral enhancement and personhood? I think my earlier accounts of Afrofuturistic conception of personhood still stands. And in this regard, I would like to argue that we need to have a balance between individual and communal needs. Though McKinsey's understanding of personhood is essentially relational, taking community at its core, it is important to go beyond cross-cultural understanding of personhood in view of the dynamic and evolving nature of African society, which is not immune to technological transformations going on elsewhere around the world. McKinsey's conception of personhood, regardless of its criticism, it might have generated in African philosophical discourses, has made some important inroads that deserve to be complemented in view of the current and future realities in Africa. It is in this regard that an Afrofuturist conception of personhood might be had. And by this, I mean a philosophical imaging of the evolving impact of biotechnologies and pharmacological as well as neurobehavioral enhancing drugs and interventions that are capable of enriching moral personhood in the African Delta Sound. In addressing some of the moral challenges and tensions arising from extant and futuristic biotechnologies and medicines in Africa, it is important to have a complementary approach to what constitutes personhood beyond what is taken to be ontologically and normatively, what it means normatively in historical African philosophy. For example, an Afrofuturist conception of personhood can help in addressing some of the moral tensions and conflicting moral intuitions resulting from a constriction of moral enhancement within McKinsey's personhood framework. Although McKinney did not accurately advocate for moral enhancement, some of his arguments pointed out how important it is to perform moral functions in the community so as to give us a sense of belonging. McKinney reiterated that personhood can only be achieved in a communal society when individuals contribute to the progress and harmony of such a community through embedding some of the norms of the community in their actions and functions. No doubt, moral enhancement is not incompatible with McKinney's notion of personhood. However, a logical leap from such compatibility to moral permissibility may not necessarily hold, depending on the evaluative reference that one is using. The temptation to argue from the point of view of the un-Africanness of moral enhancement may not be helpful, as uncritical mindfulness of identity as a fixed and unchanging essence is invalid. It is true that Africans have a traditional past to protect, but Africans also have a modern future to look up to, especially in the wake of futuristic biotechnologies. It is on this note that I emphasize that Afrofuturism orientation of personhood deserves to be taken seriously in the critical engagement on transhumanism in Africa. It can serve as a core heuristic in evolving African moral frameworks to address contemporary biomedical challenges. In the context of moral enhancement and personhood, an Afrofuturist account of personhood can inspire further scholarship on the moral tensions surrounding the balance between personal autonomy with the expected obligation to the community. Consideration of which community to prioritize among hierarchies of ontological and relational communities in African culture. We need to also think about balancing unintended consequences of moral enhancement with projected moral effect. We need to also think about how do we rank duties towards the therapeutic and enhancement dimensions of transhumanist interventions in Africa. And to tap the discussion thus far, I would like to maintain again that transhumanism is morally compatible with McKinney's conception of personhood, as individuals can attain personhood by exhibiting ethical virtues or what different called transhuman virtues within African cultures. There must be a cautious and censored approach towards promoting personhood through some essentials of transhumanism in Africa. We need education. Education is key in this regard. I align with Stephen on that note. In addition, further questions will need to be explored on the social justice implications of a policy on moral enhancement interventions within sovereign states in Africa. Thank you, and I look forward to your critical questions.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fayemi, for this thought-provoking lecture. Thank you. Okay, before we'll take questions for this lecture, we'll take the fourth and the last lecture for today. Then after that, the floor will be open for comments, questions, and contributions.